Well, hey there, I'm Dr. Tom Ulrich, and I like to talk about leadership and engineering. But since you see these two guys here, you also know I'm going to talk about Scrum. Hey, in this video, I'm going to answer 4 questions about the daily Scrum. So the first question is, so what is a daily Scrum? The second one is, who should attend the daily Scrum? The third one is, so what do we do in a daily Scrum? And the final one is, how should we modify the daily Scrum in light of the whole COVID situation? All right, so let's jump in. So, in terms of what is a daily Scrum, it's actually a pretty simple concept. So, the concept is you have a meeting where you stand up. So, it's a daily stand up. You literally come in and stand and you talk. Why do we stand? Well, because there's this phenomena where if you schedule a meeting for 30 minutes and you sit down, people will sit down, get comfortable, and the meeting will stretch to be 30 minutes or an hour or whatever you scheduled. So you're trying to do a stand up to kind of bias everything to be like, let's get in, let's say our piece, and let's go. And I got to tell you, I'm constantly amazed throughout the history of I've been doing Scrum for about 16 years, is how many people come into a stand up and they'll say, oh, I got to go to the stand up. They'll go and they'll sit down. You don't want to sit down. You want to stand. You want to bias it to being quick. Now, another thing is so Ken Schwaber in his book in 2004, as well as Ken Rubin in his book, I talked about those in video 2. They both talk about a time box. They say, look, you've got to keep the Scrum less than 15 minutes. And in the early days of Tandem, we had a problem with that as the software team started to grow. We started having 20, 30, 40-minute Scrums, and that really got out of hand. So what I did is I went and got a stopwatch, and I said, all right, let's start. I hit the stopwatch, and I told everybody, hey, we want to finish in 15 minutes. And I actually had a piece of paper on the wall that each day we'd record how long it took, and it was kind of like a score, and like, yeah, let's get the goal of getting this thing short. The most ludicrous thing though is one of the non-software teams at Tandem. They started doing Scrum, and all of a sudden they were literally spending 1 and 2 hours a day in Scrum. And the director of that team finally came to my boss and said, we're going to not do Scrum. It just doesn't work. And my boss said, well, why not? And he said, well, we're spending 2 hours a day in Scrum. Okay, you completely missed the point of Scrum if the meeting takes more than 15 minutes. So the idea is you come in, you have the meeting, and you go. And I should point out, that sounds simplistic, right? Like, well, it's got to be more than that. I mean, the whole method's named after that. Well, if you look at Ken Schwaber's original book, this 2004 book, so this book is 163 pages, and he doesn't describe the daily Scrum until the very end in the appendix, and he has exactly 1.5 pages. He just has some bullet pointed rules. If you look at Ken Rubin's book, this thing is 452 pages, and he describes Scrum in exactly 2 pages. So, and if you look at Ken Schwaber's 12-page sort of position paper, it's 12 pages. He gives a half page to the daily Scrum, but he doesn't do it till page 10. I mean, you're not really understanding Scrum until you understand that the daily Scrum is a very short thing. And that's one of the reasons that I tell people all the time, hey, if you think you're doing Scrum because you're having a daily stand-up, that's like 5% of Scrum or 2% or something like that. Anyway, so who should attend the daily Scrum? Okay, every member on the team, on the Scrum team, every member has to attend every day. And you have to be punctual. Now, Schwaber says in his book, he says, what you do is if you're late, even 30 seconds late, you have to pay a $1 fine payable immediately to the Scrum Master is what he says. At Tandem, we don't have fixed working hours. We kind of say, well, I want the morning people to come in early and the not morning people to not come in early. But the one stake in the ground is you got to be at Scrum. So my group doesn't have a lot of really late people, so we have our Scrum at 9:30, and so the rule is, hey, if you come in, or if you're a 7 o'clock person, yeah, you're set. If you're not a 7 o'clock person, you got to be there by 9:30, and you really got to enforce it. It's really bad for the team if you let them be late, and you don't want to, you want to have all your all your actions as a leader to reinforce the proper behavior, which is give them the what for if they're late, because it's rude. All right, so each member is required to attend, and in Scrum, particularly in Schwaber's book, they had this concept of chicken and pigs, and the concept comes from this old joke where there's a pig and a chicken and they're friends, and the chicken says to the pig, "Hey, let's start a restaurant together. I think it'll be a breakfast restaurant, and we'll call it Ham and Eggs." And the pig says, "No, thanks." And the chicken's like, "Why?" The pig explains to the chicken, whereas you would be involved, I would be committed. At any rate, so what particularly Schwaber really said in his book, the original one, he said the chickens are not allowed. Rubin takes a little bit softer stance, but he still encourages, it's a meeting about the chickens. I mean, Schwaber said, do not let the chickens even talk during a scrum, and don't let them talk to the team after the scrum. Like, it was pretty hard line. The one big question is, what about the product owner? The product owner is part of the team, but they're not required to attend every day because they're off doing marketing things and have other things. And, there's kind of a disagreement among thought leaders, is our product owners pigs or chickens? I think they are a pretty important part of the team, so I would call them pigs, and that's just kind of the special case. At any rate, so what do you do in a daily scrum? Well, basically you answer 3 questions. Each member on the team talks, and in turn answers 3 questions. The first one is, what have you done since the last scrum? What would you promise to do before the next scrum? And do you have any roadblocks? And if a problem's identified, you don't generally solve problems in the scrum that will make the scrum long. If it's something like, I can't get access because I don't have a password, then someone else says, oh yeah, I'll get you the password, and, problem solved. Or if it's a bigger one, is, I don't know how to use this tool, I need someone to help. You don't give that help right then. Somebody says, hey, listen, Bob, I'll talk to you later. I'll get you all fixed up. So you're not solving problems in a daily scrum. You're identifying problems in a daily scrum and figuring out who's going to help you with it. So remember, 15 minutes. That thinking needs to dominate everything. Now, the last question is, how does COVID affect this? And what I would say is this. I would let the scrums grow a little bit. I would militantly enforce that for the sort of pure scrum sort of thing, 15 minutes. But during COVID, particularly if you have employees who were hired during COVID and haven't been face-to-face and haven't had a chance to bond with the team, I think it's very important to recognize that the daily scrum may be the only time each day that new person has interaction with the rest of the team. So what I would do is I would encourage the team to goof around a little bit. If somebody gets a new puppy, have them report on the new puppy, and if someone has a kid, how's the kid doing, and do some human-y things like that. By the way, there is a lot of research on this from a researcher named Karen Lojeski. She's been funded by Microsoft for well over a decade, and looking at how teams form and all this with remote employees like during COVID. And the number one thing she finds is it's very, very important in all team interactions to have your cameras on. So I would insist that everyone in your scrum during COVID have the camera on for the entire scrum. I know some people are, not wanting to turn on the camera because they don't like how they look, or, hey, listen, you're still working. If you're afraid to be seen without your makeup, then do like you would do when you're in the office and get presentable. But we don't sacrifice team performance because of your vanity. So turn those cameras on. At any rate, so that's the story on the Daily Scrum. Hopefully that helps. There's more videos on Scrum and about leadership on my website, TomUlrichConsulting.com, and on YouTube you can search on Dr. Tom Ulrich. Anyway, thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next time.